Gurave Gaurachandrai Radhikaya Tadali Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktai Tad Bhaktai Namo Namah. Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Preman Hari Hari Bol. So, welcome to all. Good evening again. Here we are on this recurring but ever-evolving set of gatherings. Never the same, never stale, never stagnant, but in constant becoming. So that's how we want to embrace eternity, embrace reality, one and different. We are always the same, but we're never the same at the same time. We're transforming on a daily basis by the power of each other's association and company. So we are all in collective becoming this week. So let's see which new species come at the end of this retreat of each one of us. Looking 1 week back and now. So today, as we have announced, we will have Ishtagoshti, or Q&A, or as Bhakti Rasa they say nicely, Q&E, quest and exploration. And instead of questions and answers, and I will give you definitive things so you don't have to think anymore. No, Q&E, so to say, quest and exploration. Ideally on the topic that we have shared today, which was, as you recall, I hope you had a nice sharing and exercise among each of you on Lectio Divina, and a further appreciation of, in this case, the traditions in the form of Father Richard Rohr, but of course extended through beyond him as well. So the topic of today was non-dual thinking, non-duality, interconnectedness, relationality versus separateness, and all the consequences of that and so on. So we welcome any reflections you have, any questions, any inspirations. And yesterday, of course, we have more circle sharing, not so much Q&A. So we didn't have any Q&A for the topic of individuation. So we can also make some place if someone has some inquiry in that connection, since we have tried to show the topics as one connected to the other, so they are not entirely isolated, because reality is not dual. So nothing. So let's say anyone has something to bring to the table to begin with. And by the way, welcome Martina. Thanks for coming and joining us. She was with us last year in our original UK Radical Personalism mini retreat. We are having the mega one now. So glad that after a few days working in London, you were able to come for a few days. So thank you so much.
Grateful to be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems that Jamuna has something on her notebook.
No?
Possibly.
It's the possibility, yeah.
Okay, it's coming. It's on its way.
Okay.
You have it? That's it. It was on its way.
Okay, so from my notes, this might even be from
this class.
Yeah, this is on vulnerability. So no. There we go.
Sorry? What do you think? We take the question or not?
Yes.
You vote.
Yes.
Okay. Charlie?
Okay, so trying to make sense of what I've written. So I did hear you talk about this, but anyway, here we go. How to feel lovable when I've heard that we should be lower than a woman's stool. So what what kind of mentality are we supposed to aspire after as an individual? There we go, put individuation in there. Individually, what mentality are we supposed to aspire after when we hear famous quotes like that?
Infamous quotes like that, famous quotes like that.
They can be
So,
used
how to
infamously.
be a lovable worm in the stool? An individuated, lovable worm in the stool. Is that possible? Okay, thank you, Yamuna, for bringing up so skillfully all these traumatic one-liners that we continue healing in our tradition. So yeah, the other day we were talking about that with someone. With you?
No, it was in Belgium, I believe.
In Belgium.
Oh, that was Belgium. Sorry. With someone. We were talking the other day with someone,
Yeah.
not in the UK, in Belgium. Because, of course, the other day we were talking, I think I mentioned that in the Ishtagovti, if I'm not mistaken, that's probably when we were saying, someone asked about the first line of Shikshastakam. I won't forget your question, I promise. But also that's one that has been somehow weaponized for, like, you have to be lower than the blade of grass. Or sometimes they will even further qualify the line. You have to feel lower than the blade of grass. And then, of course, then comes, if that was not enough, lower than the worm in the stool. So again, we have nothing against those lines. They are there in scripture, but how we are presenting them, how we are contextualizing them, how we are understanding them. So I'll briefly mention a few words about the two of them. One introducing your main one, to show how we can understand each of these lines in a redemptive, healing way and in a dysfunctional, traumatizing way. The same line. And to show the delicate potential to go in any of those two directions if we don't have proper reading, proper lectio divina of these lines. So Mahaprabhu says famously, Trinadapi Sunichena, which translates as you have to be, not you have to be, sorry, be, it's an invitation, be, if you want, be more humble than, or as humble as the blade of grass. It's not lower, it's more humble. Not because lower, again, carries some connotations. To be humble like the grass. No problem.
Come on, Charlie.
Where's Charlie? Oh, here he is. So what does it mean? Again, that I have to be bad about myself, that I have to engage in self-loathing, self-doubt, self-unlove, that I have no opinion, no criterion, no valid voice, nothing to offer because I'm so low. No, that has nothing to do with that. The example we gave, and I will be brief on this first line because it's not your question, but we talked about that last Saturday. Be humble like the blade of grass. How the blade of grass is humble?
Bends.
Yogamaya said, not me. And when it bends, what happens?
It doesn't break.
Oh, we have good listeners here. Good memory. So the blade of grass bends without breaking. Which is funny because we have used sometimes those lines to impose bending to the point of breaking. And the very example carries the opposite implication. Do it in a way that is not breaking you. Do it in a way that is sustainable. Do it in a way that is healthy. We don't want broken people. We are already broken. As we say, our brokenness is part of our wholeness. We are integrated. In the name of healing and integrating our brokenness, we don't want to foster further brokenness. We don't want to break you. So, Trinadapi Sunichena, be as flexible as the blade of grass, bending without breaking. Be skillful in your bending. Do it in such a way that you don't end up, again, fractured, broken, lost to yourself. That's not what Mahaprabhu is. That's why he's saying, he's pointing to that example, blade of grass. So I'm just giving you one option of how this line can be read in a very, as promoting a healthy and sustainable expression of humility that is not ending up in breaking, fracturing. The imaginary is a little bit more intense and maybe more difficult to accommodate. A few things in relation to this before going to the actual explanation is, because in your question say, we were told that we had to be lower than the worm in the stool. And that statement, in the third verse of Shikshastika, Mahaprabhu is saying, be humble like the blade of grass. So he's extending that invitation to others. In the worm of stool verse, that's not the case. In that verse, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying for himself, about himself, Jagai Madai Haitimuni Shipapishta Purishita Kita Haitimuni Shilagista. I'm more sinful than Jagai Madai, and I'm lower than the worm in the stool. He's not saying you have to be that. No, he's expressing himself in utter humility, a type of humility that we may not be able to even conceive, and therefore we cannot imitate. Because this was said by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and in a few minutes we will even explain a possibility of why he said that in a healthy way. But even before going that, the point is, are we Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami? Are we in his shoes? Do we know from which place he's saying that? And at any moment he's saying, and you should be doing that. He's expressing his ecstatic feeling of wretchedness from a place that probably we were not able to even conceive. And he's using certain language and certain imaginary that we may say probably was for the time, for the culture, for the environment 500 years ago, was normal, usual, relatable. And for us it sounds like that's another planet. And it's fine, it's okay. We need to use another imaginary to convey the proper idea, again, without breaking. Because this same Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is the person that says this third verse of Shikshastakam, Trinada Pisvinichena, is the most important thing that Mahaprabhu said, and wear that verse on your neck like a necklace, as a constant reminder and ornamentation. So he's promoting Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Trinada Pisvinichena, bend without breaking. He's promoting that. And in fact, there in the verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said, raising my hands. I don't know if he says, raise your hand. No, raising my hands and declare at very loud voice, wear this verse as a necklace in your heart forever. So he's a very outwardly open promoter of bend without breaking. So if he says, I'm lower than the worm in the stool, it has to be somehow in a way that is not conflicting with bending without breaking. So how can I be a worm in the stool in a way that it's a bending without breaking? What's the connection between the two? So here comes an attempt to harmonize that. Well, there's one story that is shared once, and that can be in connection to this. There was one guru, and his disciple. There, not his disciple. There was someone who was aspiring to be the disciple of this guru, but this aspirant disciple considered himself, was a little bit, how to say in English, full of himself.
Yeah.
You say like that?
Yeah.
Full of himself. So he considered himself very highly in comparison to others. So his guru noticed that, the prospective guru noticed that. So he thought, well, he wants me to be his guru, but how much that he wants to be disciple, right? And with this, we're giving some trailer of tomorrow morning's lecture. You want guru, but where is the disciple? Are you ready to to be a disciple, because if not, what's the meaning of having a guru? So he, the disciple comes, no, and begs mercy and initiation and all the things, and the guru said, yes, but first I need to find something. I need you to find something. Yeah, tell me. I need you to go outside in the village, do research. I found someone who is lower than you. And he said, oh, that's easy, no problem. he thought, I'm back in 5 minutes, no problem. And after that, I receive initiation, so to say. So he goes, and he's, well, in his usual mind, he used to see people in a critical way, push them down and push him up on top of them. That's the tendency of the conditioned soul. Many times we just, by criticizing someone, we feel ourselves right. No? Though I'm not doing anything. No? But just by pointing out how wrong you are, I'm correct. That's a very strange psychology we have in illusion. No? By pointing at your faults, even if there are no faults, if I'm just creating, or even if they are, I think, okay, I'm morally superior and I'm correct just by showing how bad you are. But you're not doing anything to earn your goodness. It's just pointing how the others are below me. So he had something of that, but at the same time, there was some sincerity in him, and the guru's connection and instruction started to create some effect in the heart of this person. So he went and said, okay, this, whatever, he's seeing one human being, and seeing some defect, whatever, quickly. And I'm not 100% if I'm recalling all the details of the story. I'm missing something. Tell me.
It's backwards.
Backwards?
He actually supposed to find somebody who was better than him.
I think lower than him, and then he finds sweeper, and he thinks, oh, this sweeper is definitely lower.
No,
not that one.
That's another story. I want to add a story to give the example. I can give the example without the story, but the story was interesting, but I'm missing it. So what's the story? Tell me. Yeah.
Well, that there were two people. One was supposed to find someone higher.
Yeah.
And one was supposed to find someone lower.
No, that's another story.
Okay.
Isn't it the one that ends with...
India is full of stories.
I thought it's the one that ends with worm in the stool. Like...
Yeah, it will end with worm. Maybe it's a different story and ends up in the same way. You find those things in the spiritual traditions. With all, the point is the point we want to make. The story is secondary. Let's be honest. Let's go to the point. Since I lost my track in the proper narrative. But the point in general was that he will go and finding someone and realize, oh, that someone has something. The quest was something like find someone who is lower than you in all respects. So he felt, yeah, I will do it. And then when he saw someone and saw all the defects, but he saw something that that person was better than him. No? So it went for a human, and then one different species, and so on and so forth. You can imagine. Sorry, not to enter into the details. And the guru had said, like, in 7 days, I give you 7 days. That, I think that was the original thing. So he thought in 7 minutes I get that one, and it was on the 6th day, and then the 7th day. No, he feels it's not possible. I'm not finding anyone who is inferior to me in every possible. Just when the two stories converge, he's saying like some stool. We are going to the worm in the stool, and here's some worm in the stool. So he said, finally, someone who is lower than me in every single aspect. Finally, I will be able to be initiated. Which, of course, try to find the idea here. The guru wants to train the mind of the disciples to not find anyone who is inferior to him, and that will qualify him to receive initiation. And by going through a whole week of thinking, I'm finding it, oh no, there's appreciating something good, his whole mind was already trained, always extracting something positive. So when he reaches this worm in the stool, he says, okay, nothing good to see here, nothing that that is better than me. So it seems that I'm ready to go back to Gurudev and give the report. But he already had acquired some scars of seeing the good, no? Saragrahi samskars, no? And he realizes, oh my gosh, no, this worm in the stool can transform stool into compost. I cannot do that. No? And if you extend the principle, stool represents whatever is polluted, whatever is negative, whatever is dirty, whatever is all this stuff, and he can create some alchemy, so to say, and transform something that is polluting into something that is nourishing. So he realized, no, I cannot find that. So he went back to his guru and accepted his failure, quote unquote, in following the instruction. And of course, the guru was very happy and gave him initiation because realized, okay, great. That was the idea of the exercise, right? The idea of the exercise is that you failed. But you failed to your failing mentality you had. So in other words, it's a success that you are not able to find that. So that will be a way to explain this verse. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, I'm lower than the worm in the stool, means, again, the worm is creating nourishing out of pollutedness, so to say. And in his humility, he's feeling, I cannot do that. We should be able also to go beyond the literal interpretation of this example. Even the literal interpretation is fine. Again, the worm is creating compost. I cannot create compost. If it's, I read the example literally, I cannot myself create compost out of stool. Literally, the example is applicable. He can do something. But if you go to the more interpretative level, allegorical level, something nourishing is being made out of something not nourishing. So how much warm capacity do we have, to those things that come to our lives and we feel it's not nourishing, it's bad, this shouldn't be happening, and transmute all that into compost, into food for the soul. So we have a rightful and healthy way to say, I'm lower than the worm in the stool, really, but understanding the context, which I know, of course, that unfortunately that has not been the case historically. I mean, it was just be lower than the worm in the stool. Explanation, please. That doesn't mean to be lower than the worm in the stool. To be lower than the worm in the stool means no questions after my order. That's cultish, basically. That's dangerous, that's dysfunctional, and that's not Krishna consciousness, basically. That's a cultish misrepresentation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Not to blame, not to criticize anyone. It happened. Immaturity, lack of human balance to deal with revelation. We take sacred texts without context, and we create holy wars as a result. Whether it is in terms of literal crusades and inquisitions, or crusades and inquisitions among us on a personal level. So yeah, it's important that we somehow redeem and reclaim these expressions or words like the ones we were talking these days that sometimes only meant certain things for us, and we feel, I don't want to use that word anymore, I don't want to. Okay, but don't throw, how to say in English, don't throw the baby out of with the bath water. Right? Is that in the UK also exists?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have that in Spanish. It took me a few days to understand what are you talking about. Don't throw a baby, don't do that, for example. So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's a really nice term.
okay.
That's a helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is a story that is in our tradition. I'm not making up the story, but because I'm also say, oh, you're making up the whole story to make that idea fit into a way.
Mhm.
No, there are stories in our tradition which point to that. The point is how much we are connecting the dots, so to say, and saying, oh, okay. Yeah. Something else? You have to. You are friends, so you decide who goes first.
Is it a new question or I just
Mine would be a.
Which question is?
I'm not sure if it's a question, but I just wanted to know if it's a correct question. Would it be correct to say that Lord Chaitanya is the personification of non-dualism?
Of non-dualism.
Mm.
Why you will say that? I'm not saying no. I'm just
Because he's,
want to know the background of that.
because we have Radha and Krishna,
Uh-huh.
but in Lord Chaitanya we have one.
Okay.
So I just want to know that it's correct to say that.
I mean, we can make a case for that, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this famous verse where in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the beginning, which basically saying that, no? Ada Krishna Pranay Bikritir Ladini Shakti Rasmad Kadmano Api Viveka. Anyhow, the two became one. No? Or it says basically the one originally became two, and then the two became one. So we can make a case if you want. Okay, Radha and Krishna, the supreme dyad, you say in English? Dyad? Dyad. Sorry. Like a duet, not like couple. The two. And Mahaprabhu somehow is the union of the two. Of course, also, although we may also make a case for more nuanced explanation, which is Mahaprabhu is not Radha and Krishna in every sense of the term. Radha Krishna, Radha Bhava Dyuti Subalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam. Krishna say, Mahaprabhu is Krishna, tasting the mood of Radha, being enveloped by her hue, but he's Krishna. It's not Radha and Krishna in every sense of the term. Radha and Krishna are Gaur Gadadhar. So Radharani remains being her own entity, identity as Gadadhar Pandit. So in that sense, we can still make the case for the divine couple in Gaur Lila appearing as Gaur Gadadhar, was worshipped by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example. In one sense, Mahaprabhu's Radha and Krishna combined is Krishna tasting the mood of Radha, being enveloped by her complexion. In that sense, the two became one in a dynamic sense, but not in every sense, because if not, Gadadhar Pandit disappear from the picture. And you don't want Gadadhar Pandit to disappear from the picture, because Gadadhar Pandit is the most important person in the whole Gaur Lila. That's another conversation. But so, I mean, we can make a case for Mahaprabhu being the deity of non-dualism. Here I present him as the deity of radical personalism. And of course, radical personalism is a non-dual tradition. Gaudiya Vaishnavism, radical personalism is non-dual Gaudiya Vedanta. So he's the deity, he's the Ishtadev of the Sampradaya. So we could say Mahaprabhu is the deity of our unique form of non-duality. Achintya Veda Ved. And we can make the point of Radha and Krishna being united, but we have to be careful not to make that unity to the point of making Gadadhar Pandit disposable, because that's have to be said.
Okay. So I have a comment on the previous question, and I'll ask a question after.
Okay.
So I was thinking that it's interesting to me that when you say, like, not you saying, but it said lower than worm in the stool, that, you know, it's kind of taken as inferior, but lower than worm in the stool may not necessarily mean it's inferior, but just lower in the food chain or something like that, because in reality nothing really is like inferior or superior, right? Everybody is doing what they're meant to be doing, like that. So I was thinking that, like, automatically when we read or hear, we just think, oh, that's inferior.
Thank you. That reminds me of something. Yes. In connection to what you mentioned, like nothing is inferior or superior because each one is performing their function, so to say. You know? A worm is being a worm, and we need worms. And the bee is a bee, and without bees, there are no humans. If you play out the implications. So in that way, everyone is like, how much you can say, oh, bee is inferior, superior. Inferior in which sense? Superior. So there's one nice quote, since we have been talking about appreciating other traditions, and this here comes another favorite of mine. He's Thomas Merton. He's another Christian mystic, great author, great poet, beautiful soul. So page 63, I'm quoting something very interesting about him in the same spirit you are mentioning. He says, it's a long quote, but let's see. A tree gives glory to God by being a tree. For in being what God means it to be, it is obeying Him. It consents, so to speak, to His creative love. It is expressing an idea which is in God and which is not distinct from the essence of God. And therefore a tree imitates God by being a tree. The more a tree is like itself, the more it is like Him. If it tried to be like something else, which it was never intended to be, it will be less like God, and therefore it will give Him less glory. No two created beings are exactly alike, and their individuality is no imperfection. On the contrary, the perfection of each created thing is not merely in its conformity to an abstract type, but in its own individual identity with itself. This particular tree will give glory to God by spreading out its roots in the earth and raising its branches into the air and the light in a way that no other tree before or after it ever did or will do. Do you imagine that the individual created beings in the world are imperfect attempts at reproducing an ideal type which the Creator never quite succeeded in actualizing on earth? If that is so, they do not give Him glory, but proclaim that He is not a perfect creator. Therefore, each particular being, in its individuality, its concrete nature and entity, with all its own characteristics and its private qualities and its own inviolable, whatever, identity, gives glory to God by being precisely what He wants it to be here and now, in the circumstances ordained for it by His love and His infinite art. Anyhow, I read the whole quote. But he tried to make this point. A tree, by being a tree, gives glory to God. He's being what He's meant to be. In that sense, another way of saying it, we have a right to say, I'm lower than the worm in the stool, because the worm in the stool is doing what the worm is supposed to do. A worm is accepting his identity as worm and not trying to be something else. I'm trying to be a lot of things that I'm not constantly. A worm, a tree is a tree, and it's transparently representing what God is wanting him to be. I'm still going a lot opposing and resisting what I'm supposed to be, what I'm meant to be. So from all these places, we could even say, wow, no, I'm lower than this tree, than the worm, than the stool. Again, not in a neurotic way, not in a way that we get discouraged, but just humbled, and we can look at the tree and appreciate and learn, like Mahaprabhu himself gave the example. Tarora pisa Vishnu. I'm looking at the tree and I'm learning so much. Like this tree word looking today in the graveyard, which was a name, you what?
You. Y-E-W.
Okay. So this tree that I was told by Manjuali that it's only found in graveyards, and it's just like kind of, it becomes poisonous, but also it's absorbing. It is said that to absorb so much dense energy inhabiting in those places, and in its own way releasing and redeeming the environment. So I thought, wow, that will be the perfect tree. Probably Mahaprabhu would think about that tree when he said that line, be as tolerant as a tree, implying have that capacity of know that your potential is to have the capacity of healing and absorbing and integrating, without becoming poisonous yourself, of course. Analogies always fall short at one point, but yeah. So Mahaprabhu looks at the tree and he's finding Guru Tattva. Again, another trailer for tomorrow. Guru is not limited to a particular human being who gives you initiation. Of course, that's not excluding that person, but if you understand what Guru means as a universal principle of revelation and guidance, Guru is everywhere. Krishna is the original Guru, right? He's the number one in the Parampara, in the list. Krishna is called Jagat Guru in the Bhagavatam, Param Guru Guru, the supreme Guru of all Gurus. Krishna is Guru par excellence, and there is not a place where Krishna is not. So Krishna is Guru, Krishna is omnipresent, Guru is omnipresent. Technically speaking, there is Guru everywhere. There's not a place where Guru is not. How much we are ready to feel that, see that, learn from that, that's another story, and that's why we need someone that specifically teaches us about it. But in principle, Guru Tattva is all pervading. So that's part of understanding what's Guru. Who is your Guru? Who is your Guru? Everything, everywhere. Like we were saying the other day, even the Bhagavatam says in some occasions you have to be your own Guru. Probably you don't say, if someone asks you who is your Guru, don't say I. That will be a little controversial, but keep that as a secret instead of with proper understanding, of course, proper understanding. Okay, something else, some other sharing, comments, questions? Yes.
So this is related to maybe yesterday's class and today's also. Like you were talking about potential, kind of exploring our potential, or I mean, I'm not remembering the exact words you used, but basically that
we are units of potential.
Yeah, like exploring all that we can be, in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that this is something that you actually hear everywhere. Like not just in Krishna consciousness or here now, but even in the world in general. Like in a sense, like you can like in terms of like doing, like reach your ultimate potential or something like that, and it is always measured in terms of like how much one person can do. But in this context, it's different. We're not talking about doing, but being. But I'm thinking after that, there's also doing that comes out of being. And I wanted to know like what exactly this being and like exploring the potential in terms of all that we can be includes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate that you made that clear difference between how we understand potential in terms of doing, being, and the doing that comes after being. Yeah, nicely framed. Because as we say, people many times just see themselves in terms of doing. As we say sometimes, I'm a human doing. You are no longer human being. Human doing. According to what I do, I am. I have to perform, I have to act, I have to be perfect, and I am. If I cannot do, my own self-image starts to disappear. The other day I was talking with someone who told me that, like, I'm a doer by nature, and I understand some people have more nature for doing, for being active, and it's fine. But also that can be, if you are totally defined by what you do, that's dangerous also. Because the moment you cannot do something, whether because you are getting sick or old or basically dying, leaving this body, where your sense of identity goes. No? And I was talking with this devotee who told me, I'm a doer, and I fell sick for 10 days, and I was just 10 days on my bed. And I had a huge existential crisis because my sense of who I am is derived from what I'm doing. And for 10 days, I couldn't do anything on a physical level. So I didn't know who I was. No, and that can happen to all of us. Many times we overengage and we remain very busy, so we don't have to realize that we don't have a clue who we are, and that we are deriving our sense of identity from our doing instead of from our being, because our being, our sense of who I am, sometimes is so poor, so fragile, so fractured, that I need to keep doing things. So I recreate another sense of being that sounds a little bit more acceptable. That how do I see myself or who I am? No? And of course, the solution is not to just keep doing, and keep the facade in place, but try to go to who you are, your being, and how do you see yourself. And if you see yourself as unlovable and all the things we have been talking, then we need to address that situation, to heal there, to understand how that's a misconception, to see ourselves as crap, basically. You are important to Krishna, you are amazing to him, you are loved by God, and not only by him, but by other people. And so there starts the whole rediscovery of who we are. So that's it in terms of your question. Yeah, everyone talks about potential, everyone talks about become all that you can be, but not everyone thinks in the same direction. And many people think about, as you say, doing or having, becoming more popular and more, I don't know, effective in society, gaining more money, and I'm attaining all that I want, and I'm being all that I can be. But in our Bhakti language, we will talk more about our potential in Bhakti. So what's all that I can be? Well, it's difficult to put it into words, but I can be a person who becomes from tip to toe absolutely infused by love. So you can become love. That's interesting. We are not love at present. If you have any doubts, you can read my first book, just in case. Still 3 copies there available. No. We don't have love for Krishna. If you think differently, we can have another conversation, no problem, later. But that's not in scripture. We are not made of love for Krishna. We are not filled with that, but we have the potential for that. And we are to be defined by our potential. So in terms of potential, that's all that we can be. But potential means also it can go in any direction. I have an ever-evolving potential, but if misdirected, I have an ever-devolving potential. And I can go, and there's no limit to how low I can go. There's no final, bottom point. We can degrade and go down and become an illusion and miss the mark more and more and more and more and more. That's the mark, but I'm like. So that potential is there. So our brightest potential is in terms of love, in terms of becoming a statasta shakti. Let me use a few technical terms. Absolutely put ourselves under the shelter of Swarup Shakti, of Bhakti Shakti. That's how Krishna defines a Mahatma. Now we are Atma. But Krishna talks about Mahatma. It's not that the soul grows in size, but it speaks about the potential of the Atma when it comes under Bhakti. He says, Mahatmanas tumam partam daivim prakritim ashritaha. That's 9th chapter of the Gita, verse 13. If I'm not mistaken, 14, 13. So he said, my devotees, he refers to his devotees as Mahatmas, great souls, are those who put themselves under the influence of Bhakti. You can be under the influence of Maya Shakti, you can be under the influence of Swarup Shakti. One thing makes you a Mahatma, big soul, other thing makes you a Duratma, or a contracted entity. So our potential, the ultimate potential of the soul, is under the shelter of Bhakti. So when we do that, we become infused with the scent of love to the point that we become love-like, if you want to use that. Words do not suffice. No? Then comes the word tadatmya. Srila Jiva Goswami employs the word tadatmya specifically in his commentary of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to give the famous example of the iron bar put in fire. Tadatmya is kind of attaining sameness. Not absolute identity, but attaining sameness. So this is an iron bar. Use your imagination. This is an iron bar, actually. It seems like a water bottle, but it's an iron bar, I can tell you. We put it on in the fire. This is a fire. Use your imagination. It's not the harmonium. No. Hopefully it's closed. Yes. We don't want to turn off the fire. And in enough time, the iron bar, the scriptures say, acquire the qualities of the fire. It can burn, it can illuminate, all this stuff. So it's still an iron bar. It's not that it stopped being an iron bar, but it became fire-like in every, technically speaking. Of course, if you take out the iron bar, it becomes again iron bar. So in the beginning of our practice, our hearts sometimes are compared to an iron bar, and we have to expose ourselves to the fire of bhakti, to the fire of sangha, to the fire of introspection, to different fires you have been going through and feeling inside of you these days. No? And the iron bar starts to melt, starts to become fire-like. Of course, if we run away from the fire, the iron bar becomes iron bar again. But Jiva Goswami says, when the jiva, the soul, becomes fully dedicated and surrendered to the influence of bhakti, and there is no running away from the fire again, one remains as tatastha shakti, one remains as jiva shakti. We do not become swarup shakti, but we become tatastha shakti, fully enveloped by swarup shakti. And that's what we call siddha deha, or spiritual identity, and that's an identity that's the jiva shakti, which is absolutely infused with bhakti, with love in every pore of its being. So that's the ultimate potential of all that we can be. And as we say, the nature of that potential is that it's ongoing. It's not that you attain your spiritual identity full infused with bhakti and a constant unfolding for eternity, forever, of love. No? It's not that you attain the highest peak of love of Krishna. There's no highest peak of love of Krishna. The highest peak becomes the lowest, a lower peak by comparison the day after. There's a highest peak today and a highest peak today. So it's an ongoing, unfolding disclosure eternally, day by day by day. So our highest potential, all that we can be in bhakti, is to attain this type of existence. It's existence fully imbued with the presence of love, and love by its very nature is ever evolving. Love is not a quiet thing. No. Okay, I attain love, now I'm quiet. How now you don't be quiet. Now and the action will come out of that being. No? In that being, in love, being infused with bhakti, comes actions. That our Swamis will say those are basically ecstatic consequences of who you are. It's like natural, like when you are filled with love and someone starts to dance and celebrate. It's not that you are thinking, okay, I will raise my hands now and I will roll on the ground and I will do this. It's just like a natural byproduct of what's overflowing you. So all the doing in the spiritual world, let's put it that way, or all the doing, and the spiritual world is a state of consciousness, don't forget. All the doing in that platforms are just, all the actions are just extensions of the being, extensions of that ongoing becoming that one is. No? perpetual. The being and the becoming become one. So, yeah. It's too overwhelming what I'm saying.
No.
Does it make sense?
Yes, yes.
That's the nature of love, ever evolving. So if I am to enter into that fire of love forever, I become, my potential becomes ever evolving as well. So there's no limit to what I can become. That's why this, of course, as you may know, that's the theme of the third book that I'm writing now, finishing. And there we mention also, like, because sometimes we have this idea like perfection. No, you attain perfection. The word perfection is another word that can be very dangerous. Because perfection sounds like a finished state. Once you reach there, that's it. Like I mentioned in my book, perfection is not a fixed maximum. It's not fixed. It's always a new maximum to attain, over and over and over again. That's real perfection. Real perfection does not allow for final perfection. As I quote Bhakti Thakur in the morning, today's perfection is tomorrow's imperfection. That's perfection. Right? Because the nature of reality is ever evolving. Today I was reading one quote from Richard Rohr that I plan to quote share in a few days. But let's quote it today again. We will forget in 2 days, no problem. It's one line. This is for doing lecture divina also. They're interesting. Say, the last experience of God is frequently the greatest obstacle to the next experience of God.
Wow.
I won't repeat it. I'm joking. The last experience of God, our last experience of God, is frequently the greatest obstacle to the next experience of God.
That is amazing.
You got the idea, right?
Yes.
We become overtly attached of our latest version of who Krishna is for us, and Krishna already became something more, someone else, because again, he's ever evolving. So he's no longer in the same place we experienced him 5 minutes ago. So if we pretend to make him still that same person, we won't find him even. We may even think, oh, Krishna disappeared. No? Why Krishna left me? Why? What I'm doing? Blah, blah, blah. And it's, no, you are just projecting an outdated version of God. He's already something else. He's updating himself constantly. No? So in that sense, our last experience of God can become the greatest obstacle to the next experience of God. There's always a next experience of Krishna. That's what keeps the relationship exciting again and ongoing. Imagine if that wouldn't be the case. Krishna is one single thing, and hopefully you're happy with that. No. He's always, as we say today in the morning, Krishna is becoming more Krishna. The all attractive is becoming always more beautiful. It's ongoing. Martina, you raise your hand.
Yeah. I just wanted to share something that happened to me, I think, first time when I came to Radhadesh.
Okay.
So I came there and I was super excited. I'm going to Radhadesh, Krishna, everything. And that was maybe 6 months after I met devotees. So I was like in this excitement. And then I came there and I was like, what is this? And I was completely lost. And I even thought of going back to Croatia. So I went to BLS, said you have been there. And I found a book, and it was such a coincidence that there was no one actually in BLS at that moment.
BLS means Bhaktivedanta Library Services,
Library,
just in case, where you can get books in Radhadesh.
Yeah. Advertisement. But, yeah.
They hosted me recently, so I owe some
So
favor
you
about
can-
that.
you can. So there was no one.
And my books happen to be there. So.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
So I found that book and I was just like, okay, maybe I should buy it. But because there was no one for like 20-30 minutes, I just sat down and started reading it.
Okay.
And Yeah, and there was one sentence, and actually I was reading, and when I read that, Lakshmi Priya entered.
Yeah.
So what I read was something similar to what you are just saying, and it was I cannot say the exact words, but it was saying like the faith you lose, actually the faith you gain after you kind of lost it, is always higher than the faith you had before, which is something similar as you have been saying now, because you have a feeling that Krishna is not there, but actually he is there, and when you turn in again and when you find him, it's a greater experience than you ever had before. So that was very powerful for me and completely changed my stand rather than after that. But
Happy that the story ended happily. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's it's important to understand the things, because we all go through this, and we may think like something is going on wrong, I must be doing something badly, and probably not. It's all meant to happen. You are just not understanding what's taking place. Krishna is just evolving, and you just think that he should remain being the same person, and without bad intention, without being conscious of your mistake. So you are frustrated, discouraged, thinking the process is not working, who knows what. I know it's just that Krishna continues to become more Krishna. As I put in radical personalism, we have to keep the pace with transcendence, because transcendence is ever evolving. So we have to keep the pace. It's always 2 steps ahead. So we have to develop the relationship. And faith is the same. Again, the faith journey has to be conceived in this journey language. Language is ongoing, giving up, embracing a new layer, dying to our previous conception, being reborn again, dying to that. It feels like death in some cases. To die to an old idea, to die to an old conception, to an old way of thinking, even about God, it's a type of death. So it's necessary to die continuously, to be born again till you become eternal. And even in eternity, you are continuing to do that exercise, because Krishna is always new. Always new. Rupa Goswami says that interestingly in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when he mentions 64 qualities of God, of Krishna specifically, one of the qualities is Krishna is changeless, which seems to contradict all that I have to say so far. Hold for a minute. Then he goes 2 qualities after that, only 2. And he says Krishna is Nitya Nutana, which means ever fresh. No? So he's changeless and he's ever fresh. So again, we have to understand what does he mean by that? How can someone be changeless and ever fresh means ever new? No, ever evolving, ever unfold, but changeless. It seems like contradiction of terms. But we have to harmonize those. So the idea is he's changeless in which sense? In the sense that he's always Krishna, right? It's not like us who take another body, another birth, another sense of identity. He remains being God. God remains God. Thank God. No? So he's changeless in that. He's changeless in so many other things. Like we are changeless as Atmas. We are eternal in so many aspects. We are changeless. But that changelessness doesn't get in the way of ever-evolvingness. Krishna remains changeless in his being God, and his being eternal, and his being made of love, and his being... That doesn't change about him. And he remains changeless in the fact that he's always evolving. That doesn't change about him. No? So yeah. There is something that doesn't change about God, is that he's always changing in terms of evolving in love, and growing, becoming more beautiful, more deep, more enchanting. Yeah. So yeah, we have to be careful about, and that we will be talking in 2 days when we talk about divine ignorance, this idea of coexisting with God being a perpetual mystery, because he remains evolving at every moment. So what we took for certain and for granted. Oh yeah, I know who Krishna is. He's no longer that. He became something else. So now it's a new mystery to discover. And that's the passion of the gopis. Every single day they are rediscovering Krishna. Every time they meet Krishna, he's a new Krishna. This is a symptom of anurag. Anurag is one of the symptoms of prem, which makes you see your beloved as if you never met that person ever before. That's a subjective experience that Radha and Krishna have with each other. They have met 5 minutes ago, they got separated, and Radha sees at the distance Krishna and asks Vishakha, who is that blue sapphire-like boy? And she says, that's the boy you have been with 2 minutes ago. Said, no, it's not possible. That's not him. And she's right in one sense. Because now Krishna became more than what he was 2 minutes ago. And Radha's love became more of what it was 2 minutes ago. So it's, technically speaking, they are not wrong. They're not delusional. That's the most sober statement, objective statement about reality. He's no longer that person. No, he became more. And she became more. So the two of them are actualized and upgraded. So of course, now they need a new reunion to experience that newness, and so on and so forth ad infinitum. That's how the lila feels itself, and it's never exhausted, boring. Although externally they seem to be doing the same thing every time, and they're not the same thing, but it seems pretty. At this time they wake up, they go this. So how you don't go crazy doing basically the same schedule for eternity? Who wants to go there? Well, when you understand that it's ever evolving, and you understand actually it's ever new at every moment, let's go there.
Because we're beings and not doings.
Exactly. So everyone's being remains renewed. So in one sense, everyone has their own corresponding identity in the spiritual world. That will be your name, your service. But we have to be very careful about not making those things into static, fixed substances. Your whole sense of being, your whole spiritual identity will continue to expand forever. You may retain the same name, you may continue using the same dress, but at the same time, all that is evolving in its own unique way. You will be receiving newer understandings of your own name, of your own dress, and everything continues to speak to you in a new language. That's what it means to be in a place made of love, of emotion. That's what we meant by spiritual worlds. Planets not made of earth, water, fire either, but made of bhava, ecstasy. Celestial Maharaj's words, he will say, planets of faith. They're planets made of faith. Sounds abstract. How something is made of faith. Well, that's where we want to enter. Yeah. Radha Priya, you have something to.
I just keep thinking about us here and now with this same concept, because we get up every day the same time and we chant japa, and take care of our deity and whatever we're doing every day. But not to think, oh, I know this, I did that yesterday, and 10 years I've been doing that, and the same thing. It's also that every time we approach the Lord in whatever way we do, to come in a fresh openness.
Yeah.
Because it's always a mystery. And it's our approach as well to know that. Yeah, I don't know what it's like to sit down and chant my japa, even though I've done it for 50 years. But today is a new moment.
Yeah.
A new, And sometimes, if we come and, I know how to play cartels, I know kirtan. No, that's coming with a past idea. That was then. To this moment is the ever fresh. Yeah.
And we only have the present moment.
Yes.
We don't have anything else. I mean, that's not little. That's the only thing you have. And everything is contained there. But how much we live in the present moment. As you say, how much we are not carrying past ideas of how things were last year, 20 years back. Some of us do not even approach practice from how it was yesterday, but with the toxic nostalgia of how things were 34 years ago. Now, remember when that was like that, and that's very tamasic. No? I mean, it's nice to appreciate the beauty of that, but not to the point that you are absent from the present moment, because that can happen also. You can just avoid the present, and that's the only place where you will have an experience. If you want experience, we want experience in bhakti. That only can happen in the present moment. Future hasn't happened yet. Past, Gaur Haribol, it's gone. Yeah, but past and future are present in the present also. No? In the present, you have the result of your past coming, and in the whatever happens in the future will be created in the present. So that's everything there. Yeah, and because of what you say, I think it's even more important to emphasize this idea of ever evolvingness of Krishna's new, because we happen to be doing the same thing every day in many ways. No? We are chanting the same mantra over and over again, the same, quote unquote, the same, because it's not the same, right? Because the mantra is not different from Radha and Krishna. We just explained how newer they are at every moment. So that applies to the holy name, because there's no difference. The whole name is in perpetual evolution. So if I don't have that very clear, very ingrained in me, I can just be doing the same thing over and over, and that will feel like hell. Yes. If I engage on all that from a repetitive, mechanical, catatonic repetition, without not losing sight of the ever-evolvingness and the ever-increasing charm and awe and wonder that is accompanying all this, it becomes like something very undesirable. And I start to practice from that place, just getting to the number, chanting my number of rounds, getting my box checked, being a good boy, a good girl. And even though I don't feel anything and I'm frustrated and empty, well, but hopefully Krishna takes me at the end of this life. And but we have lost sight of what's actually going on in the present moment. So suddenly our whole spiritual practice became like a museum. Everything's like frozen pieces. Radha and Krishna, frozen. The deity is not frozen. It looks static to our eyes. That's it. If you enter into the realization of ever evolvingness, Radha and Krishna start to talk to you like it happened with the Goswamis. That was the Archana Padati of Sanatana Goswami. The deity worship manual was like, whenever Krishna asks you for salt, smash him and tell him, I don't have salt, right? I'm a Babaji. Who do you think I am? And I know you. You ask salt. If I give you salt, then you will come. I want samosa. I want ghee. I want halava. I know you. And I told you when I got you, I told you, I only can offer this. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. No? So that's Sanatana Goswami's deity worship manual. Page one. If Krishna talks to you and tells you this, it's like, wait. Does the deity speak? No? And Sanatana Goswami will look at you like, of course. Yeah. Krishna, deity, they're no different. They're talking. You can't hear that? And it's like, no, sorry. Okay, it seems I'm not Sanatana Goswami yet. It seems I need to remind myself on a daily basis of how alive all this is, how alive Krishna is, how present God is in the present. Okay, going back to the idea of the present, right? Because we are not present. Krishna is present. As I like to say, Krishna is omnipresent. He always lives in the present. He's fully present at every single moment of the present, in every place, at every moment. And we do not perceive someone who is omnipresent. What's going on there? I call that omni-absence. If I cannot perceive someone who is omnipresent, that means I'm omni-absent. It's not that, Krishna, where have you gone? Why you left me? The wind will echo back, he's omnipresent. There's not a place he's not. Probably it's just that he's getting closer to you, but you are not accustomed to that level of proximity. No. Again, we have our idealized idea of Krishna is that, and generally we keep him quite distant. No? Because to be honest, many times we don't want Krishna to mess up with us too much. No? When he starts to participate, it's like, okay, you stay there. No? Stay in the altar. No? I will close the curtains now. You are starting to move, to talk. That's dangerous. You are asking for salt for for the chapati. I will close the curtains now. No? I have my life. You have your life. Okay, let's make things clear, right? We have a deal. Let's sign the contract. And Krishna was like, "Oh, okay. I thought it was more participatory. I think this was reciprocal. I think you were inviting me to a relationship, right?" And we end up realizing, like, wow, I don't want him to be part of my life that much yet. No, it feels too invasive. It feels too like, but it's not that he's invasive. It's that we are just have too much of a separate agenda and too much of still a separatistic vision. Anyhow, so the point is that Krishna wants to get closer to us, but it's too much for us. No? Or sometimes, again, we over-idealize his presence at a distance. So whenever he gets close, we lose sight of him and we think he disappeared. No? You follow? It's like you are here and I'm seeing all of you, but you became so close to me, let's say here, that I'm not seeing you anymore. I say, like, where have you gone, Radhapriya? Why you left me? Why did you disappear? And you will say, no, I'm getting closer to you. I'm not seeing you. No? So that's what happens many times in our life of journey of faith. I don't feel Krishna. Why did he disappear? No, he's getting closer. Because that's his nature, being made of love, in his ever-evolving love. He can only get closer. No? Especially when we are officially inviting him to do so. He can only get closer in his ever-evolving approach. He can only get closer. So we have to keep that in mind, because if not, we just think he disappeared, no? And he's getting closer. That can be one of the greatest tragedies. Someone is getting closer to you and you think he's disappearing. No, the exact opposite is happening, right? So that's, again, going back to Richard Ross' quote, no? The last experience of God is frequently the greatest obstacle to the next experience of God. Because we judge things by the past. No? Again, as you say, we take for granted. Oh yeah, I know what kirtan is. I know who Krishna is. I know anything. I know what this bottle of water is, because we project all our past experiences and what this means and what you can do with that. So you cancel any new possibility for this to be something else, because this is limited to my previous experience of this. A bottle of water is my previous experiences with a bottle of water. It cannot be anything else than that. So I relate to a bottle of water according to my limited previous experience. While the bottle of water can be more than my previous experience. And I'm just talking about the bottle of water with a big God. So. Yeah. Something else you would like to share? Oh, Bhakti Rasa, and then Karaneshwari.
Is it on this topic or something? Okay. Because I'm going back to the being and the doing aspect. Two things came up for me was, one is like the collective unconscious, perhaps of like the industrialization period, where people's worth was really created by what they produced, by what they did. So some of that is, probably still in our psyche, and it totally ties in with, because we don't know our own intrinsic value, and we have to buy our value by producing something. And you brought up, even in the new time where be all you can be and all that stuff, basically all that's doing is turning us into the actual commodity that is then sold on the market. So again, it's just about producing something that can be purchased, and that purchasing of something that we produce is what gives us value. So that came, and then also I was reminded of Henry Nouwen when he does his work with his favorite, who wasn't even like fully mentally, there was like nothing that he could do. He really was just a being. And he said that he learned so much, and his life was so enriched by having a relationship with this person who was turned into just like this bundle of giving, even that he couldn't do anything. And he was just like love. It was just an exchange of love. So that potential is there to realize that it really is that there is value in our being.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's a big challenge for not only in relation to how we relate to ourselves in terms of being, but who relate to each other also, because many times we love people as long as they do certain things and they don't do certain other things. What if that person don't do anything and they're just being? How much can we relate to that? Many times we cannot, because we're programmed by this doing. And even as you mentioned, Victoria, when we talk about become all that you can become, that's still like in terms of productivity and in terms of, and then you will be loved and then you will be accepted, attain all your potential. So finally someone loves you. Something like that. And that's not that's not how to start the ideas. You're already being loved by the most important person, Krishna, infinitely. And on that foundation, your highest potential is in terms of responding to that. And he loves you unconditionally because he finds in you something incredible. And that something, again, it's you. not something in you, it's you. So yeah, that's for me the real empowering orientation to becoming and potential. Because if not, yeah, we just change the language in the industrialized loop, so to say, of productivity. And sometimes that has been also, of course, all the things are pushed into religious narratives, so to say. And I've seen many times in the devotees feeling bad about not because they cannot do anything, but sometimes they feel I'm not doing enough. And in one sense, it becomes a whole thing of productivity. And you can see just doing service is doing stuff and producing. And for example, something that may imply restoration is not appreciated because there is no productivity there. No? So we will feel, of course, there is its own productivity, but it's not promoted as such. So it's not healthy to engage in restorative activities. Just we want productivity here. I remember once Thomas Merton, since we quote him a few minutes ago, he writes a lot about monasticism. I mean, he was a monk himself, but he was a monk who wrote a lot about monasticism very beautifully. And he will say, basically, a monk, in his conception of monasticism, like a retired person who is in a hermit forever, that was him, basically. No, he's seen by society as useless. Why? Because a monk does not produce. in our idea of what it means to produce, again, if we have a proper eye, someone like him is keeping the whole planet in its axis by his presence and prayers and deeper empathy with the whole global condition of the planet. But from a productive, industrialized eye, it's like you're not producing. You are useless, basically. And again, how much that narrative is unconsciously present in us, in everything we do, in how we conceive spirituality, and how we approach our relationship with Krishna in terms of producing, deserving, performing, and all that is all that I can be. So yeah, it's important that we discern and Karaneshwari, you raise your hand.
Yeah, it's a question going back to what you were speaking about this morning. So I know you've already talked about it, but it's a question that I've thought about for a couple of years. It's just to flesh out a little bit more. So
Yeah.
that verse in Vedanta tap.
Mm-hmm.
So this non-dual substance is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I had for those few years was if those are all like valid perceptions
Mm-hmm.
of this non-dual substance,
Mhm.
then how could Brahman realization be such a this like such a abominable thing? Because they're all, I know you've talked about it, but I still feel
Oh, it's fine, it's fine.
So it seems like it's totally discouraged in general for anyone to aspire for that. Now, I know you're saying it's not our cup of tea, I understand that, but it seems that the mission of the acharyas is to turn people away from that. Like it's totally discouraged for anyone to go for that, but yet it is a level of realization of Krishna. So that's been a question a long time. Like, if it is valid realization of Krishna, how can it be so abominable?
Abominable. Powerful word, right? Yeah, again, I will make, as we spoke maybe today or yesterday, this difference between those who think that only this Brahman reality is the only thing and everything else is false, and those who say Brahman is an expression of the absolute, but there are other expressions, but Brahman is my cup of tea. So I go there, and good luck to you in your own journey. That's what scriptures validate. That's what we should be open about. And I will say, when some of our acharyas have taken a very strong stance, and I'm talking in general, each case will be different, is more to the other notion, which says Brahman is the only real thing and everything else is false, guys. So sorry. Which of course is very much opposed to all that we think and we feel. And that's why I will say they took that stance, because for us, individuality, personality, love, relationship, God are such cherished things. And in this understanding of non-dualism, particular, those who may feel that, is basically all those things that are the most important things for you actually do not exist. So that's a strong stance in itself. So naturally that creates a corresponding strong reply to that strong stance. You follow? If we are all now relating, like we are having these days, interaction and affection and back and forth and Krishna's presence, and suddenly I enter say all that does not exist, guys. All that you have been experiencing all these 3 days is Maya. It's all illusion. It's false. So probably you will feel a little strong about that. And you'll have a few things to say in reply. So I would say from that place, some of our acharyas have taken a certain stance. It doesn't mean that we are hating those who think like that. We are not like, that's also the thing, because even if I take a strong stance toward that view, you hate the sin and not the sinner, so to say. No, I mean, you don't hate anything. It's a way of saying, but because sometimes we don't do that well, we can just use that, but also hate the person and become resentful and that's a little too much. But apart from that, again, it's the valid possibility of someone merging into Brahman, let's put it that way, and that's okay. Not our cup of tea, but that's okay. And of course, apart from that, we have some of the statements from some of our acharyas coming from a more subjective experience of something, and they comparing their experience with something else and expressing themselves in terms like it seems like they're downplaying the other realization. But from a tatastha vichar, which will be impartial discernment, all of them are the same non-dual absolute. So I cannot insult Brahman. No. Right? So some people will like to enter into that particular state. And there is a place in eternity for that. Mhm. So if something can exist eternally, how bad that can be? How can something be exist in eternity and be abominable? No, it sounds like abominable eternity. No. So no, again, not our cup of tea. But Vaikuntha is not our cup of tea either. Of course, I'm not compared. There are differences, but it's a separate cup of tea. We should be accepting that those are valid possibilities. Mhm. And I shouldn't feel any urgency in trying to refute them, cancel them, discourage those who are in that path, if that's a valid path. And some of those people may engage in that path with lots of sincerity and depth and commitment, sometimes more than oneself. So you can always learn from anyone. No? So yeah, I think that's the challenge. Yeah. So yeah, I will try to separate those two things. Those who say all is false and only my thing is real, which is as distasteful as if I will tell you, oh, you Christian, Sufis, Jewish, all that stuff does not exist. Only Gaudiya Vaishnavism is the real thing. Nothing else. Everything else is false. It's like, no. So this is another way of saying the same, maybe in an even more extreme way, because it says everything else apart from this is false. That's literally not you don't exist, literally. Your idea of you as an individual being. So yeah, I can understand why some people may feel like a little bit like fiery after hearing that. And again, also some of these expressions come from a very ecstatic place. The boats tasting, relishing something very intensely, and they will express it in certain ways, even comparing in a way that seems like disrespectful. For example, and this can be even more bewildering, but you go to Prabodhananda Saraswati's Chaitanya Chandramrita. It's a very beautiful book, a whole set of verses praising Mahaprabhu like mad, literally. And in one of those verses, he say something like, "Who cares for Varahadev? Who cares for Kurma and Matsya Avatar and whatever they have done? Who cares for them?" No. Now that Mahaprabhu came and he's showing his lila, he starts to praise Mahaprabhu after that. So again, it sounds like he's insulting the whole Das Avatar. But it comes from a place of ecstatic appreciation. So it's not something to imitate also, no? Like if you are not there and you repeat those same words, you are being offensive. He's being ecstatic, you are being offensive. He's being ecstatic, you are being offensive. So we have to be careful when we read those statements in Shastra. Again, worm lower than the worm in the stool. Also, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying that from a very ecstatic place. So if I repeat that myself, I'm being offensive to myself in treating me like crap by following that verse out of context. So yeah, sometimes we see Prabhupada Saraswati in that same book, very ecstatic one. He said, Kaivalyam narakayate tridasapur akasha pushpayate. And so on and so forth. It's a whole verse of insult in basic. Transcendentally speaking, of course, we are not here to insult ourselves. Someone like Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur. But he said, Kaivalyam narakayate. Kaivalya means this impersonal liberation. He says naraka. Naraka means hell. So impersonal merging, that's hell. No? And then he said, Tridasha Pura Kasha Pushpayate. And the attainment of the experience in the heavenly planets is like pure phantasmagoria. It's like a flower in the sky, he says. Akasha pushpayate. You never see a flower in the sky. They're always, so he says that's phantasmagoria, no? And then he continues, no? He continues to smash different attainments. And then he goes. This is a famous verse where he says, Vishwam Purnam Sukhayate. The whole universe is filled with joy. He's speaking from a very ecstatic place. No? Sri Chaitanya Kataksha Vaibhavatam Tameva Gorastamam. No? And all this happens when you receive just the silent glance of mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You become mad like me and start to say all the things. No? Something like that. So again, it's beautiful, but we have to be very careful what we do with those verses. Because if we do, okay, yeah, copy paste, it won't work. Try it. We have tried. No, stop trying. Stop trying. So yeah. You raise your hand, someone raising. Yeah.
Just a quick thing. I was thinking that just direct experience of what you're saying is we're experiencing something here during this and talking about radical personalism. So if there's some criticism from outside, perhaps people that are looking in and saying everything that you're saying there is nonsense and it's actually impersonal and voidist and we're not really talking about Krishna. We might have a little pushback.
Yeah.
So our acharyas, everything that they were loving, everything that they were experiencing as real, saying that that's not real, so I have a little bit of pushback.
Yeah. I've seen even devotees sometimes saying something like, that devotee is not preaching Krishna consciousness, because you hear his 5 minutes of talk, he never mentioned Krishna, the word Krishna ever once. He never mentioned Prabhupada in these last 2 minutes. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't make him, that's not necessarily bad. That doesn't make him a non-devotee. He's bordering something, some other, he's about to fall down or whatever. But sometimes, you find people with different ideas of what it means to be devotee, what it means to be personalist, what it means to be impersonalist. So, something else, we are 8 p.m., so I don't want to transgress. But rather, Priya, right? We have a few minutes.
The idea of the abomination. If that Vaishnava who has experienced the glories of the Lord, seen the form of the Lord, the idea of that being never attainable, going to the place of Brahman is abominable. It's a statement of ecstatic love rather than saying that.
It's not about condemning them. Yeah. And again, we are talking about people, as you say, who really have an experience of that. So it's an undeniable experience. And you come and tell me after my undeniable experience that that's not true. It's like, what are you talking about? It's the most real thing of all real things that I've ever experienced. And now you want to say that I'm delusional? No. So then you see certain stances in that connection. But yeah. But again, we should see how, even with those who think like that, how to properly interact in a way that may be the most healthy way for this particular time, place, and circumstance, which may not be the same way as our acharyas have spoken 100 years ago, 60 years ago. At least in my opinion, everyone has their own opinion. They can do whatever they want, but time changes and things need to be recalibrated and re-expressed. It doesn't mean that we change our philosophy and now we start to think, actually all that we are experiencing is false. No, nobody's saying that. But how to respond to that, how to explain that, how to relate to that, it's always an ongoing conversation. Something else before we put the discussion to rest? Sam?
I have a question. You're talking about Krishna ever expands. He doesn't fit like the mold that we saw. Our next experience of God is totally different. So I mean, how do we? I know like spirit soul, but how do we match that? Because obviously we're working on seeing everything as connected to Krishna because he's the source of everything. So there's nothing dual about Krishna. So like, how do we meet that? How do we, like you said, like sort of, move in step with that ever expanding, Krishna ever expanding, always never the same. I know technically we're never the same, but how do we meet that? How do we meet that case by case?
That last part you mentioned was just the reply I was going to tell you. Like, you are never the same. You can, in order to understand, because from what I understand, how can we follow that? How can we grasp the fact that Krishna is never the same? Well, just look at yourself, yesterday and today. Of course, you are the same. You are Atma, but your experience is ongoing, is ever new. And I think we can all agree with that. It's not that, no, Maharaj, actually every single day is basically the same and I really perceive things. So no, it's not the case. You are always the same in the sense you are not a different another people and someone else was put inside your body. You are who you are, but who you are is also evolving and changing and learning and experiencing. So starting from that immediate case of yourself, naturally we can start to appreciate how that same pattern is everywhere. It's in nature. No river flows. How do you say? You never stepped into the same river twice. No, literally. No, so everything remains in flow. No, and it's irrepeatable. And how nature unfolds and expands. Everything is in constant movement. So if we pay attention, and that's what we may need to do more, to be more present, to be more pay attention, to be more aware of the things, to remind ourselves on a daily basis, whether it is by praying, meditating, writing, reading, hearing, but being reminded of the ever-evolvingness of everything, it becomes basically natural to think, oh yeah, of course, if all of this is ever-evolving, it's just pointing to how the source of all this is ever-evolving. It makes no sense to see everything is evolving, but Krishna is just one fixed guy over there who doesn't change, who doesn't move. And so, because in one sense, we may not have the most deep and direct and absolute perception of Krishna now. So we may still feel a little theoretical and abstract. So how is that? So begin with what's immediate and tangible to you, yourself, your immediate material environment. And everything is in constant unfolding and flow. And gradually you start to extend that pattern to everything in existence. If you study, scientists, physicists, and they study the movements of matter, how matter itself, we may say this inert matter is not moving, Maharaj, it's changeless. I'm not so sure. Go to quantum physics and what they say about actually particle and wave and everything. It seems to be moving and everything seems to be dancing. They even will use those expressions in science. Like the atoms are dancing. It's like it starts to resemble who is the source of the atoms. Krishna is in every atom. I think Krishna is known as Natavara, of the king of dancers. So there seems to be some pattern. It's interesting. To my naked eye, this seems to not be moving. But if you look closely with the proper tools or education, they will say, no, everything's actually vibrating, moving. So evolving. No, it's not moving, it's moving towards something else, right? Toward a greater level of fulfillment. That because all that pattern that you can even find in an atom is coming from the original source of everything, which is tending in that direction. So naturally everything else replicates that movement, that dance, somehow or other. So yeah, the more we became immersed in sometimes in studying and understanding and realizing how everything has that template, that DNA, it's just like a natural conclusion. Okay, the source of all this is all this is coming from there, no? Because he is like that. Everything is like that as well. No? So, and informed in that way, we engage in our practice, in our sadhana, reminded again, the holy names are never the same. They are Radha and Krishna, different, ever evolving, and relating to. So you adopt an ever evolving stance toward your practice, because you understand I'm approaching an ever evolving personality. So my approach should be open to that ever evolvingness, and I pray and I chant from that place, and I remain aware of that, and gradually you will have experience and realization of that ever evolvingness that will affirm and affirm more and more. Yeah, Krishna, Radha, and Krishna are always becoming more. And there are so many statements in Shastra. And that's why I felt inspiration. That's why I'm become a little passionate talking about that. Sorry, but that's the book I'm writing. So, but many times we don't talk too much about that, and many times we don't emphasize this type of things, and we develop a sense of more mechanical, predictable, static, boring, discouraging practice instead of everything becomes alive, matter, God, love, soul, everything is ever evolved. But many times we just missed those statements. So we are trying to put them together and to make some hopefully coherent presentation, so you can really become filled with ever evolvingness, filled with inspiration to thread the path in a very dynamic, alive way, because that's what reality is. So it's just about relating to reality for what it is. Ever evolving. No, we are not just here after. We don't want only the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We want everything as it is. The soul as it is, Krishna as it is, the matter as it is, Bhakti as it is. So, okay, my leg is begging for the closing. We are almost 2 hours, so we can put the discussion to rest. And tomorrow morning we continue with our next session in the morning, issues and tissues between guru and disciple, light and shadow in the guru-disciple relationship. Let's see where we end. So thank you so much for your presence. Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bo. Vanchakalpataruvishcha kripa sindhubhye cha titanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo Ananta Koti Vaishnava